I love those two little fine fellows sliding back and forth across the screen, and then that dapper gentleman hanging up in the corner. Why, it looks kind of like this. And this is, of course, X's for Show. Welcome back to your weekly media response show. Of course, we are on Wednesdays, and we are talking comics. You can check out the show at X's for Show on all your social. And as for me, I'm Nico Action, and you can check me out eponymously at Nico Action. That's NICOACTION.
Talking comics again after a little hiatus, and don't worry, we will still be talking about X-Men 97. We're just taking some time to collect our thoughts, so that'll be on Saturday. But for today, we are back into the pages, and we've brought along a new friend.
Oh, yeah. Now, I see we already have a judgy stare coming from superfan extraordinaire Ali Galactic. So I don't know if it's worrying that we're not going to be talking about X-Men 97's 3-part mega finale. Please do not worry. We have ages to say, adventures to talk about. I really think it's really our blood that we're going to be talking about here. So, don't worry about it. It's happening. But today, unless you have a thing you want to start with. Okay, I don't know. Maybe you got a lot of X-Men feels. We are going to talk about X-Men Forever number 4, and we're going to be talking about Green Lantern number 11. This is the third volume of X-Men Forever, but that's because the technical third volume of X-Men Forever was called X-Men Forever 2. So, nomenclature, it be a thing. But I want to start where we're going to start. We're going to make our way over to my wonderful Green Lantern family. I'm so excited to bring to the show. I'm very, very excited. But we're going to kick things off where this show has always kept itself firmly ensconced. And that's with X-Men Forever number 4. Kieran Gillen has been. It's funny. I promise this goes somewhere. I promise. I promise. Recently, Jordan Dwight said in an interview part of why Jonathan Hickman left the X office. It kind of sounds like ultimately was hubris. Not only were the other writers looking to do things that he simply could not make room for in his own vision, no judge, he found that the non-X-Men writers didn't want to play ball and was ultimately told no about his ideas for Black Panther, no about his ideas for Franklin Richards, and felt like the whole thing was taken from him, so he hightailed out. No judge, do your thing. It's almost like Kieran Gillen is doing the opposite, and this is sort of the sequel to his original Uncanny run. And there's ways I don't love that Sinister became the central villain of the Hoxpox era, and Apocalypse became a footnote.
Yeah, first off, I love that you talked about Hickman and you brought in some of the real conflicts that he faced, because today the headlines are all Hickman wanted to do a Sunspot and Cannonball book and it didn't work out, so he left. Which is unequivocally not what the statement that was made about that was. It was simply that they felt bad that they were not able to make room for him to do that book. And there was a little comment made being like, oh, he did all that work and we couldn't even give him, like Jordan D. White said this. It wasn't Hickman saying this is why I left. Jordan D. White made like a little stupid joke about like, he did all this work to bring this era together just to have Sam and Beto together, and we couldn't give him the Sam and Beto book. And of course, comics journalism, being in the incredibly sad state that it is, took that headline and an AI turned it into Jonathan Hickman left Krakoa because he could not write his one dream, which was to do Sam and Beto. What you described are actually probably a lot closer to some of the conflicts he faced that ultimately, probably while being given a ton of other offers to do stuff from both Marvel and other companies, he said, yeah, you know what? I can probably let this go. He clearly did not leave in a huff. He clearly did not, pick up all his toys and go. He immediately went and did other Marvel projects. He has a Marvel book out today, along with in the same week.
Oh, you mean the book he was second choice on?
I'm sure that will become the headline next week. Jonathan Hickman, named second, decides to take everything and leave. So anyway, I think you pointed to some real things that we've always had a little bit of an inkling of. But this interview kind of expanded a little bit. And then I think you are pointing to some things that are not being said right now regarding Kieran Gillen, but I think we might hear in like a year or two when we're further away from this. This is in a lot of ways him pulling together his own sequel for the ideas that he had that started in Uncanny X-Men in the San Francisco era when we re-met Sinister in the head of the Dreaming Celestial. And now Sinister was this dandy with a lot more immediate ties to the Victorian roots that we knew he had from other stories, but we hadn't really pulled from a lot before this. He was a lot more fun. We were finally
more floppy doodah.
Yeah, we were finally able to lean into the silly and figure out, like, there's also something very Joker about him. Now that we're talking DC more, we can pull those references in. There's the thing where, like, it is really silly and it is really camp, but also this person wants to do, in Joker's case, just like murder and destruction. In Sinister's case, horrifying science. But it scares you a little bit. Like, no matter how silly the guy is, there does have to be a point where there is an actual threat. And the threat is that he wants to do science without, any restraints, meaning that if somebody has to be in horrible agony for decades to do that, he wants to do it. And that just has to be that. Really cool of Gillen to pick all that stuff up. Back then, it made the Utopia era start off on a huge kick. People are having a lot of nostalgia for the X-Men in San Francisco right now. And I do agree that all started out really fun and really cool. And Gillen was a huge part of what made that all so interesting. I think these are all really interesting concepts. I do that big critique. This was not where we were prior to Hickman arriving.
I mean, Gillen.
Sorry, Gillen.
Yeah, I just wanted to double check because it wasn't where we were prior to Hickman either. And
you're
one
right
of them
about that.
felt more positive than the other, kind of sort of.
Yeah. This was not where we were prior to Gillen arriving, and it started out fun in Immortal when we didn't necessarily know the scope of where he would take it.
Yeah.
And around Sins of Sinister, some flags went up in terms of, like, this feels like a lot of Sinister and a lot of everything is sinister. And then really soon after we got out of Sins of Sinister, it became clear that this era was ending. And so all of this stuff that, if this era had gone on 10 years or something, the Sinister part of the era could have been, even no matter how big he was, it could have been just like a cool part of it. But in this case, basically the entire thing is not the Sinister that we know, but a Sinister is the big bad.
And it gets even a little bit more, like, weirdly frustrating in that same way. Because, when you're talking about the scope of we didn't know versus what it winds up being, one of the things that I'm left thinking about a lot is the Moira engines and the resets. And people keep being like, oh, well, and this is going to sound like 3 points, but it's really 1 point. People keep saying that, the Marvel Studios is responsible for the end of Krakoa. But if that were the case, then wouldn't they be rebooting Spider-Man? Wouldn't they be rebooting Black Panther? Wouldn't they be rebooting the Avengers to be further? They're instead rebooting these things to be kind of like their own comic-ier thing, less like the movies. So then I'm left sort of wondering how it's possible that just this one branch, where frankly the sales are flagging, the sales are not what they were when this pitch came out. The titles are not as tight. The reviews are not there. The comics fan guide buyer awards are not there. Other things are picking up more steam. I find myself looking at this world where everybody's like, oh, they were forced to do this. But the more I think about it, the minute we met the Moira engines, what were the Moira engines going to go on for 20 years? Were you going to have 10 years of Sinister being able to restart the timeline whenever he wanted? What is the realistic over-under on that? You can blame Feige, because Feige-licious definition, make the comics irrelevant, you know what I mean? As much as you want. But the truth is, Feige's got that MCU money. And that means he's making decisions that are the best for the brand. I don't believe he would come in and sweepingly say, destroy a financially, critically, and fan successful line when, frankly, turn to X Twitter 1 year ago and tell me that people were still suckling at Krakoa the same way. You know, once you got the nudes, you unsubscribed to the OnlyFans. And I think fans are forgetting that Krakoa dropped its nudes in the first 12. And you unsubscribed to that OnlyFans pretty fast, folks.
I mean, I hear what you're saying in terms of like sales really did fall, and that's a comics thing. That's a weird place that we continue to be in, and that you and I, as we have continued to do comics coverage and try and figure out what we want it to be and how we're kind of swimming upstream, not with like story concepts or anything, because I think we're always happy to talk about books even when we don't love them, but when the industry machine makes it kind of difficult to figure out how to situate your fandom, that's where we've been having a lot of trouble. And it's been a very known thing, and a thing we see a lot, where issue 1 sells the most copies of any book that week, and especially with X-Men books, you know, Immortal sold huge, but by 4 a lot of people fell off, because if it doesn't give fans exactly what they want in issue 1, they're just gonna leave, and they'll come back when the trade happens, and you know, they'll see if they like it. And that's part of how the industry works. But it feels like a lot of the time Marvel is immediately surprised and disappointed, or at least their strategy functions like they weren't expecting the drop off that we literally all know happens. Like, it only doesn't happen with Spider-Man. Everything else basically experiences this enormous drop off, and a lot of books that are supposed to be ongoings or maxis become 5 or 6 issue minis, because the sales just dropped immediately off after the second issue, dropped immediately off after the third issue, and just continued to get worse and worse. And I get that sucks, and that makes it complicated, but it feels like we're still not seeing anybody show up with a strategy that can result in something that the company can feel good about publishing while still giving good stories. It seems like when the book doesn't do well, somebody goes, oh, I guess it must have been bad, so we're just going to rethink the entire thing. And that just usually isn't the case.
I think, though, part of the problem is, and I'm going to come for the machine, not you, because what you're saying makes sense, but the machine is lying to us. The problem is the input-output isn't title by creator, it's creator by design. And so when Immortal fell off, we got Forever, because he clearly could not fit everything he didn't get to do in Immortal into Rise. Or Fall, whichever one he's responsible for. Right. Vernal Equinox, the Mutant Man. And we see these creators just continue to evolve. You know, one of the things is Aaron's Avengers was originally like bi-weekly. And when it couldn't support that anymore, we got Avengers Forever, which gave us, you know, some of the most unforgettable stories we ever read from Aaron, from Jason Aaron. With things like the All Rider defeating the symbiote Red Skull because a symbiote is just another vehicle to drive, or the world's sexiest Tony Stark ever, Ant-Man. You know, we have these incredible opportunities to talk about runs that become dynastic. You know, something that I hear a lot, and this is weird, I guess I don't have a lot of other ways to put it. other than Kennedys and women, I don't hear a lot of people be terrifically worried about dynastic leadership within the Democratic Party, unless it's a wife, a daughter, or a Kennedy. We're always kind of like, oh, well, that's another man carrying on another man's tradition. Sure, go for it. And I feel like politics lends its dynastic behaviorism to comics, where people like Kieran Gillen are able to resume this uncanny run 10 years later, and even Ron Mars, who we're going to talk about in a little bit, resuming the Kyle Rayner run that Jeff Johns blood splattered in the last page of the issue out of his very fingers. That's right, Jeff Johns has 2 storytelling tactics, and I don't love either.
And there's part of me that doesn't mind it because it actually does make sense that the Phoenix is a really important part of the cosmic goings on of Dominions and the end of the Krakoan era. It is the sinister thing. Like, it's just that, and that's been going on for a long time, so that's just kind of a huge loop that was thrown into all this, that I just feel like once that doesn't hit and it's the big thing, then it's really tough to come out of. The idea that, there are 3 other Sinisters and then 1 Big Daddy Sinister, and that is so much of what is plaguing the X-Men right now. I don't know. It doesn't
animated series.
It just doesn't, that concept doesn't super hit for me, but whatever, that's where we are. Bringing the Phoenix into it, I mean, it makes sense. Like, there has always been this, like, well, where would the Phoenix fit into these new cosmological ideas that we're bringing up? Oh man, I just don't know if this resolution got me anywhere. Like, this was not, and I don't entirely blame Gillen for this, because a lot of it is just circumstances, but this was not his Morrison Phoenix moment. This just did not have the insight that had. I mean, like, for Morrison's part, he just got lucky with when and how that was published, what else was going on, what had come before it.
Yeah, can I just so correct me if I'm wrong, but part of this story here in Forever, let's jump into it, because I agree with I really love that you're Ali Galactic, because I always want to be like Ali Gal, right? And so I always want to be like, hey, I agree with Ali Gal. But so anyway, Sinister fell flat as fuck for me, and I can say part of why. TK, when you touched on Morrison got lucky with when it was, this is, if I'm not mistaken, Jean the Phoenix is Hope's father. And Hope, when she dies after killing the Phoenix, kind of becomes the Phoenix.
Yes, because Jean is kind of the Phoenix
anyway.
that needs to be killed, and
right.
So she is the Phoenix, and this is funny because it goes back to an old Claremontian thing that I actually am really surprised is not more clearly referenced. Again, this just feels like a missed opportunity. But the idea was that the Phoenix is actually Rachel's father. Jean is the Phoenix's mother, and the Phoenix is Rachel's father. And Cyclops did not contribute any material. He is, of course, Rachel's father in that he raised her, and he'll always be her father, but he was not involved in the creation of the child. That was between Jean and the Phoenix. And that was something that had been sort of suggested and was maybe going to come up later. It's a theory that people have had for a while and that people have always been interested in. But I think as time has gone on, Rachel being Scott's just like straight up daughter has felt too important to people to take away. And they've moved Rachel away from Phoenix stuff, although now kind of not. But getting to explore that idea in a slightly different way seems to be kind of part of the name of the game here. So we see it now that this sort of Jean incarnation of the Phoenix in the White Hot Room is Hope's actual father.
Which means in some ways, I am, yeah, you know, Allie saying the God, Father, Son, Daughter, Holy Ghost thing, grown. Yeah, because the other thing then is it does sort of feel, and I want to say this really tastefully, you can't prove progress by doing the same thing a bunch of times. Hope now has a mother that is also a father, kind of like Nightcrawler.
Yeah, exactly like Nightcrawler.
And so it sort of feels like there was one moment that they wanted to tell, and everybody wanted to be the one to tell it. And while I am here for that progress, I am here for that excitement, I am here for that moment to see that visibility and the beautiful restatement of what it means to be a parent, doing it in a way that felt more plot device than honesty did not feel like it brought me joy. If I'm Marie Kondoing this, this is the first thing to go. No, not really. Sinister is, but this doesn't follow far behind. You know, I think back to the fact that Pearl Jam used to outsell Nirvana. And what happened? Well, Kurt Cobain was smart enough to die first. And I think about how when Hickman left, every single member of this team said, well, they better bring in somebody like Fraction, or it better be like Gillen good if they're going to make up for losing Hickman. And then it was Gillen. The problem is, legend's not a legend until it ends. Fables didn't realize to stop at issue 50 either. And I feel like this is an example of why nobody goes to Pearl Jam concerts anymore. So.
I mean, that was beautiful. People still go to Pearl Jam concerts.
I mean, I tried, but they were too expensive. So,
well, there is that. I think they're definitely not as fun as they used to be. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I really
remember that. Thank you for telling me.
I really appreciate what Gillen was doing here, and I mean, like, I don't know. He had his ideas about what was going on, about what would make sense. And I always take it back to the fact that Enigma is introduced in Ewing's Defenders Beyond. So, like, he is actually really trying to play with a lot of people's ideas and bring them together. And it's not, I don't know, it's not like the worst thing anybody's ever done. You know, it's not like... There are so many just big swings that people have taken in comics that are just absolutely terrible. And we mock them, and that's fun. This isn't that. It's just Hickman's ideas were so much bigger than one Victorian man's fear of death and the weird things that he did to try and understand the universe. Like, and even one weird Victorian's man attempt to understand the universe really could have dovetailed well into other stuff that is happening now, like into the ideas of Defenders Beyond, into the ideas of things like gods. But they don't necessarily dovetail well into the kind of cosmology that the X-Men were starting to dig into. I don't think this is anywhere near where Hickman was going with it. As you mentioned, it really excludes Apocalypse, which is twofold weird. One, it's weird for Sinister because
is no Sinister without Apocalypse.
Right. And the idea that, like, so one thing I still am unclear on is the Sinister, is the Nathaniel Essex that was turned into Mr. Sinister Red Diamond, or was it the original Nathaniel Essex who became Enigma, who was turned by Apocalypse and then created Red Diamond clubs, Orbis Solaris?
I think if I had to,
there's no good answer to this, but like, I want to, please tell me what you think.
I think it has to do with resetting time points.
Yeah.
And one of my big things is with this whole thing, does Krakoa ever not matter? maybe Krakoa is going to be time slipped away, and the Phoenix is, the real thing. Maybe the Phoenix is the standard by which things like Krakoa get measured. Krakoa is a small timeline, the Phoenix is a big timeline, and that's going to get redone. And that Sinister that became, that Nathaniel Essex, who became Red Diamond Sinister, is connected to further adventures of Cyclops and Phoenix. But that kind of can't be the timeline anymore. So, unless we're about to find out that Rachel Dratch, Screaming White Diamonds bitch, is the actual Sinister all along, I think it has to do with rolling reformatting of perspective of time.
Yeah.
Because, Ali Galactic, it's so true what you're saying. Year one, they're like, we need a mutant religion. And then subsequently, they just immediately go back to Anglo-Saxon, let's G's it up. And which
is so funny because that's not like Kurt establishes the mutant religion and that's not it. And then Exodus comes along and is like, I'm really into Jesus, but he's dead. And I guess I'm a little more bi than gay. So, hey, teenage girl, I'm into you now. And I get why Cy Spurrier left and is now shitting on Marvel, talking about how their vampire stuff is terrible, because he really did the work to create the mutant religion, and it's not an easy one. It is as problematic as all religions are and should be, founded by a great man, a guy we all love, but he can't be the only person doing the religion. And a lot of people think the religion is killing each other to be resurrected better, and everybody's having babies and not taking care of them. So it was really cool. And then we just completely shifted focus to some very choice stuff that is very Christian.
Well, and it's in part because X-Men are fashion. You know what I mean? Yeah. And Krakoa was just their ray of light moment. And, From the Ashes is going to be Music and Beautiful Stranger. And that has to be okay, because what came before it was something to remember. It was a best of all the classics and kind of, oh my God, what's happening? And so, oh man, I'm going to hate X-Men hung up. And so the big thing I'm drawn to then is sort of the way that when you're talking about the X-Men finding religion, it almost becomes like a fashion mask that they're wearing. It becomes this opportunity to engage with a notion rather than an opportunity to fully give into the story. I think the mistake in the heart of Krakoa is that we believed in it, the marketing ploy, not it, the storytelling. Because you know what? I'm going to be honest with you. Yeah, in catching up on Green Lantern, how in God's name does Wally West have 3 kids? That's insane. I'm reading 1980 something where Wally barely has his life together and he's like a teenager. And how has that time passed for that character? Because there's tons of characters at DC who haven't seen that sort of time passage and are still in the exact same place they were. And whereas characters like Captain America, their name is America, so they have to update to the idea of America. And gosh darn it, even the Punisher had to change to fit a redefined term. The X-Men just click to whatever's popular and sexy because the X-Men are popular and sexy. And so as long as they're still different and weird, they're never going to have to stick with anything forever. The moment they started having kids, we should have been suspect.
Well, that was a while ago.
Oh, I mean, in this. The moment it became start pumping out those babies, we should have been suspect. We should have immediately said, yeah, right, they're going to introduce 40 characters right now. They're going to stick with them for several years, and they're going to matter when we can't get the last 15 generations of mutants to matter with more than one writer at a time.
I mean, I agree with that. I liked the babies because I thought we were moving into... and this is something that came up even all the way into Judgment Day, which is most mutants don't have combat powers. Most mutants are not meant to be in an X-Men book. Most mutants are meant to be in a District X book, and we should have those books, and that should be part of this. I can't believe we're going through this whole new era change, and it's all just, again, it's superhero books. I was really excited about the idea of people making babies, because those people were, for instance, not Rogue and Gambit, and they were not the parents of, they weren't X-Men, but there were so many people that could have just been like, we're just trying to have this kid and raise our life, and my wife's got tentacles and I've got a snake lower half, and that's just what we're doing. And I would have liked that.
But then the kids would have had to have been raised, and that would have forced them to raise Jean and Scott.
Right.
So introducing a generation of babies.
Right. We would have never seen them.
Because Rogue and Gambit, even if they're the ones not having the babies, then have to age in relation to the babies.
And that's honestly like, I can see we're close to wrapping this up, so I'm going to start touching on DC. But like, I very much appreciate that DC acknowledges that serialized continuity over decades and decades is inherently a mess and inherently silly, in the same way that the Joker and Mr. Sinister are. And we all are here for it. Like, none of us are like, somebody's got to actually fix this and make it so that Magneto always can have been a Holocaust survivor, but is young and hot today. And you can't have that if somebody didn't at some point make him a baby. So like, there's always got to be stupid reasons for stuff. There's always got to be silly comic stuff, and they just started embracing it. And there's a new crisis every 20 minutes. There's a 52, there's a new 52. This Earth is gone, that Earth is gone. There's no Earths, there's too many Earths, there's not enough Earths. And it just, what it means is, if one year Superman is 24 and hot and doesn't know if he wants to date Lois Lane or Jimmy Olsen, that's whatever. Then there's a crisis and he's 35 and they have an 18-year-old son, and that son is Superman now. It's whatever, because all of the reasons that would come up in a serialized book. Marvel has never been willing to confront that and do what is necessary. They did once, and then literally, with building themselves the biggest, most beautiful runway in the history of comics, they literally were like, we're just not going to launch the plane. We're just going to sit it right back on the tarmac and say that everything is exactly as it was before this amazing concept that we put together, where we could have happily reset our own universe, where we actually later go in and say we did reset our universe to be exactly the same as it was before we reset it. And it just really bums me out, because we are at a point where, even if you're generous and say, for every 5 years that passes in our world, it's not even one in the comics world, that still puts Scott and Jean in their late 20s, which doesn't feel right. They should be in their late 30s. You have to account for all of the 6-month time jumps. Those start to add up. Now these kids that were 18 in the 60s have to have been 18 like before or after I was 18.
Well, especially because I appreciate what you're saying, but it's actually been 60 years. Yeah. So if it's 5 years for every 1 year, it's been at least 12 years. So they have to be 30.
30. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I don't know. It just, there's also the idea of just like, Jack Bauer just got weathered by the fact that having 6 24-hour days that were horrible broke the man. Like, yeah, the rest of the year was fine, but he has one day every couple of years that is so horrible that it just ages him, and that's the X-Men's whole life. And the idea that none of this aged them is also just getting a little bit stale for me. So even though I'm a huge newbie to DC continuity specifically, and there's a lot of stuff where I'm very confused, I'm aware enough to know that they have their own ways of dealing with and acknowledging how messy serialized decades-long continuity is. And I do at least envy that somebody over there is like, we should at least acknowledge that this is a big hot stew of mess, where Marvel is like, nope, everything is totally cool and it's not weird at all. There's a perfectly good explanation for every single one of these things, and just trust us.
Well, even using Jean as the example, think about the fact that we've spent so many years waiting for Jean to be the Phoenix, go off on her own, Phoenix it the fuck up. And they're finally doing that in this era, which is a big return to classic form. And so it's like they're trying to constantly say, look, we're giving you that progressive thing you want. By only ever doing one or two truly, truly brave things at a time, they're always saving 3 or 4 truly, truly brave things for later. And that's something that Marvel has managed to do so successfully for so long. You know, they waited from 19, let's go generously with 80, until 2010 to do Avengers vs. X-Men, you know, with a Phoenix core and having this whole idea of this expansive newness. But what did it boil down to? Every superhero fight ever, every basic power version ever. They kill Xavier, up, he's back 2 years later. Up, they make the X-Men Outlaws, up, they're fine 3 years later because of a bigger event. There's just so much never taking the whole jump. And that's really what Krakoa is indicative of in so many ways. Never taking that whole jump into the thing. And I'll say this for DC, if you read Crisis, man, do they take the jump. And if you read Secret Wars, you know, they set up a much bigger jump, a much better jump. And then they just kind of hop. And so, you know,
They didn't even really hop.
They kind of hopped for a couple of months. They hopped. They did so many, because that's even the problem. Secret Wars did a bunch of, oh, but you love this, and they didn't do the new, and that's part of where Krakoa.
And they didn't carry anything out. And actually, yeah, that's actually, thank you. That's part of where Krakoa. They're not. It feels like they're not carrying anything out. And maybe we'll all be surprised when X-Men 35, that is somehow 700.
No, the next one is X-Men 98.
Oh, you.
Yeah.
Maybe we will get some hint of how some of Krakoa is being carried in. That was the one thing where I'm like, if this actually comes to fruition, the stuff at the end of this issue where the mutants in the Krakoan White Hot Room, Jumbo Carnation is there. We see that Egg is there. A bunch of cool X-Men are there. If somehow, and one of them whose name I keep forgetting, it's like a cool name, but he's like, he's a little kid and he's like, I'm the president now. Like we're gonna figure this out. It was very cute. It was very cool. And part of me was like, if this ends up being, we're putting a pin in this, and I promise you we'll come back to it when we're ready, I will at least be a little bit like, okay, we didn't lose every shred of Krakoa. But if in X-Men 35, Charles is like, I brought them all back, and now everybody is just back in America, forget about Krakoa forever, they really will have taken nothing out of this era. And I think I'm especially bothered by that possibility because I didn't see a single tweet or advertisement about X-Men Forever and about the final fate of the Phoenix, about this being Hope's last stand, about the final confrontation between Nightcrawler and his parents and everything. No, today was the news that one of my favorite authors of all time is going to be writing Dazzler, which I think is fantastic, but is really indicative of the fact that Marvel has given up on this thing already. Like to the point where they can't even act like it could go out in a blaze of glory. They're just desperate to get it swept under the rug. And that's a little painful to sit through. Like, even as somebody who loved it and is sad that it's going away, I could be stoked if they were like, we're going to give it a huge grand send-off and then we'll take you to the next era. But no, it's really like, forget that this is even happening. Start pre-ordering the next stuff, because those pre-order numbers for us are much better than you're buying this book on the shelves today.
And can I just jump in with, it's not progressive to have a handful of women writing books featuring some women. What would be progressive is having a woman on Wolverine. I love Jason. I actually consider Jason like a friend, but like Jason is not the problem.
No.
Jason is representing people of multi-ethnicities coming into a world. Like, I mean, he is Canadian, and he is a person of non-traditional white ethnicity. I can't say, and I just want to be clear. I'm not saying that white people shouldn't write things, but I'm saying exclusively white people don't get enough. Not exclusively white people don't get enough work. Jason is not the problem.
Yeah.
Jason is not the problem. The problem is not putting a female creative team on Dazzler.
Yeah.
That said, this is the exception. Everybody gets to draw the line. This is the exception. I'll make this work for me. I'll buy triple of books written by women.
But let's go. I mean, back to something you said earlier. I love him very much. I'm very happy. Well, his Daredevil exists, and I think it's great that he's getting to do his vision. I wouldn't put Saladin Ahmed on Wolverine, not because he's not a good writer, but because exactly as you said, why is a woman never going to get Wolverine? Why can no woman writer ever be the person? You know, if we can all say Jason Lowe's a fantastic writer. He's come up with a knockout lineup to be in this Dazzler book. He's bringing his love of Multiple Man into it. I think this is actually going to be a really cool, fun book. But there aren't enough women writing comics, so it's just a little weird to see that one of the woman solo titles doesn't have a woman on it, and I can forgive that, whatever, but I'm not seeing any women in places where we don't traditionally expect them, and it's weird even at this point that we would still say we don't traditionally expect a woman on Wolverine, but of course we don't, because it never happens unless the Wolverine book is X-23. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're fine. It feels to me tangential to the queer people playing queer roles in film and television.
Yeah.
And people saying, no, it's acting. It's very similar to the point where, like, writing is writing, and we know that these writers are allies. Right, but we aren't seeing enough of the people that it's great that are being kind of represented through the art, but then the people who actually live that art aren't being represented in creating the art as much as they could be, and that would be great too.
Yep. We got X-Force, which is written by a man of color, but again, it's a man there. X-Factor, written by a man. They also really, a lot of these men skew Gen X and older, and
even the queers skew cis heteronormative. Even being white and queer and having a foursome on Fire Island doesn't make you not cis poly heteronormative.
Yeah, it's very different. It's a very politically acceptable. This person can still hang in the boys' club. Where the people that you see that are just like, this is a really like shockingly queer person that is very in your face about it. Which is something that even I can admit at times I'm not always super comfortable with, but it's something I still want to see in my books because that's how you get more comfortable with it. They alienated people like Cena Grace who really had that identity, and it worries me that we see the same names over and over again, all of whom seem like great, talented people, but it feels like they are who Tom Brevoort can stand to be in a room with, knowing that they're gay. And I would like for better.
Same. And I would like to see more women, more diversity, and hopefully From the Ashes is not just From the Ashes, but it's also for the people.
This Storm book is going to be a real... I'm not going to sleep comfortably until I know who the creative team is on that book. That's a real make or breaker for me.
Big barometer.
Yeah.
All right. Do we want to wrap up? Any final thoughts on X-Men Forever #4?
Yeah, no, it's donezo. It's really tough to get final thoughts on this stuff because the only kind of final thought that matters is after X-Men 35. We are not far away, though, so we'll see soon.
And to that end, I think one of the things that is really important to consider is that, this whole thing is played out pretty far in advance. And so we're going to see what happens with X-Men 35 and go from there.
Yeah.
All right. Well, rolling over into something that we kind of never talked about before. So, we're going to see how this goes. Hopefully
Nico will be fine. Y'all have to give me a little grace and leeway.
Well, and hopefully, the y'all enjoy it. But growing up, there were two books that meant the world to me, and they were Daredevil and Batman. And then there were two other things I loved, and it was Green Lantern and the X-Men. And my Batman collection got trashed at one point when I was like 18. As did my Daredevil collection. So the X-Men and Green Lantern won. Over the years, I was able to... I decided like the most important thing in the world was repairing the Daredevil collection, so I did that. I as an adult kind of parted ways with Green Lantern because I couldn't afford it. It just got to be too much, too many books, all the freaking time. It was really tough. I jumped on for Green Lantern Rebirth, which, by the way, I do want to be clear about how while Green Lantern has maybe never been the number one selling book at DC for more than a month, the DC Rebirth era is literally named after Green Lantern Rebirth. The idea of the Lantern Corps would go on to define at least 7 crossovers in 15 years. We're talking about a title that definitely is significant, even though it is constantly just there. So we are picking things up with Green Lantern, volume number 7. There's too many Green Lanterns. Don't worry about it. Just pick up the book. You'll figure out which ones are there. They usually say their names.
A lot.
Yeah, they get pretty into the names. But the main thing going on with Green Lantern that you need to know is the Green Lanterns are space cops. Zillion billion years ago, there was a race of super beings who wanted to do the best for the universe and make it. And they split into groups like the Guardians, the Zamorans, and the Korugarians. And they would proceed to learn the emotional spectrum. The Green Guardians, well, they were blue, but they would go on to form the Green Lantern, who were fearless. The Korugarians, frequently pink, would find themselves yellow lanterns. I love all of this color work. Zamorans, who are very Amazonian ladies, are Star Sapphires. And then there's a whole bunch of other ones. Like there's only one Orange Lantern because Orange is greed and he's too greedy to share it. The Green Lantern Corps is fascinating. All you really need to know for this point is it's all fucked. The Guardians are missing, and the United Federation of Planets, aka basically Space Trump, is in charge. You're caught up.
Yeah, I mean, I think you even went way into too much detail with some of the Lantern explanation that they truly do not give you. And like, it's a really funny thing of like, I kind of know, I've heard every word that you said, and I like am vaguely familiar with the combinations, but I don't really know. And like, I was aware that other colors of ring were attached to other emotions. But like, I did know that orange was green, but I didn't know there was only one guy. It sort of doesn't make.
Please.
Oh, is that who that is? Who's in the prison cell? They're friends with him.
No.
Whatever. Don't explain. We don't have enough time.
Well, just it's sort of the way they're friends with Sinestro.
Yes, I get it.
They're just stuck with people.
We'll get into it. This is another one of those things that's really funny to me. My video game playing brain, and like there's some part of me, because I'm such a disorganized, not math oriented person, but I really appreciate like rules and specificity. So the fact that you have like red lanterns, green lanterns, but then it's the Zamorans and the Star Sapphire. Like that makes no sense to me. Like they're not the blue lanterns. It's just
no, they're
like...
the pink lanterns. They are. They're the pink lanterns. They're just
okay.
They have a special name.
But then what are the Star Sapphires?
They are the pink lanterns.
But then why do I know the name Star Sapphire?
Because there was originally one.
Right.
And she was Star Sapphire.
Okay.
And then when other people became her, they were also Star Sapphire. And then in 2005, when they decided, oh, well, Sinestro's always had a yellow ring. Okay. Well, Star Sapphire's always had a pink ring. They were like, oh, okay, yellow ring. That's the Yellow Lantern now. all along. That's always been the Yellow Lantern. We just never knew it. Star Sapphire, that's always been the Pink Lantern. We just never knew it.
And then the Zamorans are...
The Guardians are the people who created the Green Lantern rings. The Zamorans created the Pink Lantern rings.
Okay.
Okay.
They're a race of people. Like the Shi'ar are responsible for safeguarding the M'Kron crystal.
Yes.
Yeah.
The Zamorans
like that made the rings in Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, the Zamorans safeguard the pink power battery. AKA, we can't stop being horny till we kill people.
So is there another race of people that protect the yellow and red?
Yellow is the Korrigarians, Sinestro.
Yes.
Ooh.
So Sinestro's people created the Yellow Lanterns.
Ultimately,
but he was a Green Lantern.
Ultimately,
this is what I'm saying. This is comics. This is comics fuckery. And I will say none of this super duper comes up in the book. Like, you can get through not knowing this and still enjoy the book a lot, but you can't not be aware of the fact that all this information is lying under the surface. And I ride that rail between desperately wanting to know more because I can see it's there, and also being fully aware that the book would be horrible to read if every time they mentioned one of the things they then did an expository dialogue about why it exists.
Yep.
But like a really funny thing that came up this book is the only thing I know about the Star Sapphires is that Carol is one of them. And this entire series has been driving me a little bit nuts because she's like, oh God, it's so annoying that you're Green Lantern. And I'm like, but you're literally a Lantern too sometimes. What are you getting so upset about? Leave the guy alone.
She most of the time can't know it because if she knows it, she goes a little crazy with horny for Hal.
But as of this issue, as of issue 11, she hath been called. And so I sort of felt like that was one of those moments of like, I know enough to also, this number one cover, I love how they are vaguely tangentially inspired by Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds.
And they're trying so hard not to, and you can even see where Kilowog is based on,
I don't remember who played Kilowog in the movie.
Oh, I was going to joke and say Steve Buscemi.
That's very funny.
Paul
Giamatti.
Oof, God, sideways. But I really agree. In fact, this book, I love Zermanico. The art on this book is so good, except where it looks a little, maybe he's that good. Maybe he's that good, and we're all just so simple. But there's times it looks AI, because it's so photo good that even if it's not, which it's probably not, I don't believe it is, it takes me out sometimes because it's too photorealistic in a way that doesn't fit the other figures.
Yeah, I feel that.
So the plot of this book is essentially Hal can't be a Green Lantern because this evil group has taken over. The Guardians are missing and the United Federation has taken over the Lantern Corps, and they have banned all of the Earth Lanterns because Earth Lanterns are too cool and too much fun.
No, they have quarantined the sector, and the Lanterns from Earth can stay and hang. They cannot go to Earth. If they go to Earth, they cannot leave Earth,
and they can't have their rings proper in space.
Yes.
Come on, come on.
They all stay except Hal. Guy Gardner stays. Kyle Rayner stays, Joe stays, Jessica Cruz stays. Every Earth Lantern stays
in space. Except
they stay with the United Planets and continue to be Green Lanterns for whatever reason. Like they actually have good reasons for doing it. It's not actually a bad thing.
Yeah, they explain each character.
But the point is they don't. This is not the story of how all the Earth Lanterns lose their powers and become something else. This is the story of Hal quitting his job and being directionless. You know, this is the story of the guy who is Green Lantern. I mean, this is the person that mostly, if you think Green Lantern, if you're me, if you're somebody like me who didn't read a lot of Green Lantern, doesn't know anything, the person you probably think of when you hear Green Lantern is Hal Jordan.
It's Hal or John. I mean, even if you're like a weird Guy or Kyle person, you come back.
Yeah, I mean, I know all those people, but if you say Green Lantern, the first person I'm going to think is Hal Jordan. And for most people, that's true. Again, because of the Ryan Reynolds movie, that's going to be true. So that guy, Green Lantern, quit and went home and now has to figure out his direction in life. That is the core story. And that's not the worst place to start as a new reader. It's definitely not the easiest. This is, as somebody who has jumped on to a lot of stuff, this is absolutely not the easiest, but it is in no way the worst. And it is, for as tough as it might be to pick through and parse a little bit, it's really fun. It's got a lot of really gorgeous art and really cool moments. The writer does a fantastic job of packing a lot into 2-issue stories. So like this Sinestro story that we're looking at right here on the issue 3 cover, there's just like kind of I mean, like it's seated in one issue. There he is. It's seated in a couple early issues, and then you get really 2 core issues of conflict with Sinestro, and then it's done. And you know, there's obviously more to it than that, and he'll come back, I'm sure. But
he realizes that he's no longer feared after being used as a patsy in Dark Crisis, which I haven't read, but evidently he thought he was the bad guy of that, but was being manipulated by somebody all along. And so no one fears him anymore. And he becomes so angry with all of the problems with the emotional spectrum, he inexplicably becomes a Red Lantern. I've never seen this. I mean, like, the idea of Sinestro being anything but a Green Lantern or a Yellow Lantern, that's stunning.
Well, and recently they have started to introduce this idea that the greenness of the Green Lantern has a connection to the green, which is a kind of fundamental concept for the DC universe of, like, I mean, that's where Poison Ivy gets her powers. That's where Swamp Thing gets his powers. It is the concept of nature, essentially. And it is it's been the green for years. They've referred to it as the green for years. And they do also have the red. And the fact that Hal's powers are coming from this connection that Earth has, that the green of Earth has to Green Lantern powers, sort of led me to wonder if what is happening with Sinestro has to do with the red.
Well, and I know you're not reading the gayest book at DC just yet, but the gayest book at DC
Yes.
ends a week from now.
Yeah.
What an incredible opportunity. What an incredible experience. I am a better queer person for Alan Scott, Green Lantern 1 through 6. But in it explores the fact that, so Green Lanterns existed because the Guardians thought magic was evil. It was time to defeat it. It led to there also being magic Green Lanterns, who are like literally, Green Lanterns are technology. It's a magical ring, but it's a technological ring. It's a thing. There's magic rings as well, and they use an alternate lantern, and those lanterns, instead of being powered by the green and red batteries, are powered by magic forces called the green and red flame. And Alan Scott has his green ring powered by the green flame. And they have given him a now boyfriend through the ages, a Red Lantern, who was also a closeted gay man who was like experimented on by the Russians, who is a Red Lantern. And they're showing that green and red actually are these romantically linked ideas in 2 different titles now. So that's a really great point. I mean, you're not even reading the other book yet, and you already picked up on what they're trying to create. So that's that's spectacular.
They're also pulling from a lot of deep previous Green Lantern lore. I know Joe is a character that came up in books written by one of my favorite authors of all time, N.K. Jemisin, who wrote the Broken Earth series, one of the greatest science fiction, science fantasy series ever written.
love
Just an
Joe.
incredibly powerful author, and that I've always been curious about reading her Green Lantern run, so I'm very excited now. But I was very excited to meet Joe. But there's clearly a lot of background history going on there, and again, I will say you can't not recognize that it's there, and if you don't know it, you will at times be like, they're talking about, like, you are the friend that just joined the friend group and they've got a bunch of inside jokes. But at the same time, they do a really actually fantastic job of writing every character to type and giving them a role that is clearly to that type, and then saying, like, this is Joe is very clearly the you are all a mess. I'm technically in charge today because nobody else is doing anything. It's not that I have been appointed the leader. It's just that I am leading the charge. Guy is always very recognizable. I mean, you either know who Guy is or you know who Goose is from Legend of Zelda, and it's the same person.
Yep.
So, I've been very impressed overall with how they've managed to, I imagine, from everything I've read, stay really faithful to everything about who the characters are and everything, but create something that is pretty accessible to somebody new.
I feel very much the same way. I'm missing a couple of years in there in the middle. I have everything up through about 98 and then everything about 2005 on-ish. And there's stuff I'm still missing. There's stuff I'm like, oh, okay, cool, I'll look that up. But then to get things like Tom and have him say he's a new guardian of the Millennium and New Guardians is one of the worst things that ever happened to the DC Universe and the Green Lanterns. But it's time to laugh about it, and that's awesome. And not just laugh about it, but make it powerful. Give it a purpose. Give Tom meaning again. Tom was Hal Jordan's first friend way back in 1959 when they used to call him Pie Face and mock him for his race. And now he is a character who is the only person who could possibly lead Hal to salvation by showing him where he's from. That's a much better role for Tom, a character I love very, very much. Also, beautiful giving his wife Terga a reference. She has been around in the DC universe since 1961 and has stood by her man when Reaganomics took his gas station chain from him, when the United States government abandoned their contracts for Tom. Look, I have a lot of feelings on Tom, okay? So it was just great to see her referenced. Big fan.
A very funny thing that DC does a lot more than Marvel is characters will speak in logos. So both Millennium and New Guardians in the same speech bubble get referenced by the logo that they clearly had when they were published in the 80s when they were published. He says, it's the new Millennium, and Millennium is in the logo, and I'm one of the New Guardians, and New Guardians is in the logo. And that's how you know you're looking at a reference. But I went to Nico and I was like, I need a little bit of explanation here.
And I believe my response was, oh my God, no, stop.
Yes, that was in fact your response. And I realized now that you were just so surprised, but I was like, I think he thinks I'm joking, and I'm not joking. I don't understand what's happening.
I was so happy.
And Nico did explain to me what the Millennium and the New Guardians were. I still don't understand what's happening with Tom, but that's okay. Like I said, I know the medium. I know that there are some things I'm just going to have to not know. The bigger thing I cannot accept, and I said this to you as well, is stupid Carol's fucking beta cuck boyfriend. This might be the one thing that I either think is genius and like is a really great personal storytelling touch to this series, or I hate it so much. And I think that, is it Jeremy Adams? Mm-hmm. Should not have put this in. This is a character type I don't love. I always go back to Carrie Elways in Liar Liar.
You're scared of the club.
You're scared of the Claw. Claw's coming at you. Just the worst type of dude. And like I think it's a funny character type, and I do get it. But sometimes, like Carrie Elways is in Liar Liar is a great example because they just ditch him. Maura Tierney just goes off with Jim Carrey because what are you gonna do with this guy? And sometimes this character is just kind of a pointless punching bag, and it's not the most fun to see. Hal is dogging on this guy the whole time, locking him in bathrooms to steal his girl. And he's just completely oblivious to it. I don't know how I feel yet. If he ends up becoming a Red Lantern or something, I'm going to be really into it. If Carol is just like, we are breaking up, it's not. I don't know. I don't know.
I hope he's Goldface. That's a dumb reference. Goldface. He's just he's a bad guy who just has a gold face, and so he's Iron Man in all yellow. So Green Lantern can't fight him. He's just a big gold face.
That'll happen.
And I agree with you though, because like there's actually too many Green Lantern characters to keep up with for me to worry about Beta Cuck Boy.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Kevo, I believe I also sent you the covers for, by the way, the cover Kevo has up now is the beautiful variant to number 11. The ring logo is a variant to 7 as well. I love all of these ring logo design variants. Very in the tradition of Green Lantern Volume 381. It's almost like the Gale is Back famous Daredevil cover, where it's like everybody does it all the time now. But Kevo, if you could pull up those Night Terrors covers. I missed this the first time. I did not read this because not here for your event garbage. It was issues 1 and 2, and then this. And every issue of this series has a 8 to 12 page backup, and the 8 to 12 page backups in this have nothing to do with the first 2 parts, which then get finished in the third. It was such a mess to try and put this in a readable order. I'm so disappointed I hadn't read this the first time. Hal Jordan realizing nothing matters and having a good time in his dreamscape, flexing and laughing for himself, doing things he's always dreamt of doing. What a great time seeing Hal laugh. Gosh, not just smiling because he knows he's so cool. Laugh. But the thing that I thought was a real testament is when faced with hell in his own psyche, Hal Jordan fights till he gets out and feels like he won. When faced with hell in his own mind, Sinestro lets it kill him and is just like, I survived. Hell's nothing now. And like the difference between Hal needs to beat back his demons and Sinestro is eager to let them kill him to see what he can learn from them. That's why Sinestro is my favorite. That's why Sinestro is my baby boy. That is why Sinestro is perfect. It's funny because like Star Sapphire in her most evil moment executes John Stewart's wife, another Green Lantern, and it literally takes like 10 years, 12 years to forgive her. Literally, Sinestro commits genocide and kills every member of Kilowog's species twice. And everybody's sort of like, but it's Sinestro, you know? And I wonder how much of it is because Sinestro kind of loves being tortured and everybody's just sort of into it. And I feel like there's just a lot of great moments here. But to play us out real quick, TK, I would love to get your thoughts on these backup stories. The first 3 are John Stewart. There's 2 of Sinestro. There are 4 of Korg Sinsen, a possible child of Sinestro, who is the greatest character of all time. There is 1 of my precious baby boy Kyle, the love of my life. There is 1 of Jess, 1 of Joe, and we are now in a 3-part Guy Gardner story before we get the secret origin of Lord Premier Tharos. How are you feeling about these backup stories playing out in Green Lantern? Because they're not in War Journal, they're not in Wayward, they're not in Sinister Sons, and they're not in Alan Scott.
It starts off feeling like this is maybe more of an anthology book and they should maybe call it Green Lanterns.
Ooh, I love that.
And maybe make Hal's stories a little bit shorter and beef up everybody else's a little bit. It then becomes... So it starts with the John Stewart stories that are going to lead into War Journal, but they're fleshed out enough that it does feel anthological. And then it tells you at the third one, like, continue in War Journal. And then it keeps doing it, but they increasingly feel, up until Guy Gardner, the ones between John Stewart and Guy Gardner feel like advertisements for the books.
Yep.
And
Nothing happens.
Almost to the point where I actually, because this is the other problem, there are actually advertisements for other books that don't
Wonder
start
Woman,
in
Flash,
everything,
Batman.
but they don't start until these anthology stories, these shorter anthology stories. So it gets sort of confusing if you're looking at a preview from another book that in which this story will be published again, plus the rest of it, or if it is a prequel story leading to something else. And in some cases, it's neither. It just is it's just a little vignette story. This Guy Gardner story appears to just be its own sort of contained thing that will pick up elsewhere, but isn't leading anywhere. The Sinestro story is literally a prequel to Sinister Sons. The John Stewart story is literally a prequel to Green Lantern War Journal. And
I keep doing that too.
It's the Punisher Green Lantern War Journal would be a really horrible book for somebody to write. Don't do it.
Garth Ennis.
Yeah, please, Garth Ennis, don't do it. So you said to me, and I almost got upset, you were like, this is maybe why this isn't a good idea for the X-Men, because my thing is like, stop publishing 17 X-Men books and then complaining when nobody buys the second issue of any of them because they're just not interested. Publish one 64-page anthology. And, and you pointed out, like, is maybe some of your confusion why that's not a great idea. And you are both right and wrong. It might not be a great idea at all. That's just simply, like, we can accept that might be the case. But I think the big problem here is they have not made very clear what they're giving us. I like this idea for the X-Men because every X-Man to me feels like, every mutant feels like a star. Jumbo Carnation feels like as much of a star as Jean Grey.
I'm so tired of these textiles.
Yeah, yes,
literally.
Such a good line.
Themes that in the emotional apex of Forever 4.
And it's hilarious. And like, all you want is Jumbo Carnation's, Miranda Priestley Devil Wears Prada book. Like, I just think that'd be really fun.
That mutant.
That in a Dazzler touring story in an anthology book about mutants that don't have powers, I think would be really fun. I sort of don't think the same is true for every Green Lantern. I don't think we're all looking for, like, what are this person's experiences versus that person. I like the idea of them working together as a whole and maybe getting little stories. So I don't know. I'm glad that I've had this little sampler of everybody. War Journal is a lot. And so leading up to it in smaller bites was actually very nice, except for it almost didn't work because it's still, once I transitioned to the book on its own,
it's overwhelming. It's still
kind of too much.
Even I did a lot of homework.
I'm sort of unclear because they started referencing Earth Zero.
Evidently, it does go to an alternate universe that only comes up here.
It feels like John Stewart is multiversal.
Yes, because he's the Witchfire.
Right, but
the
John Stewart in War Journal is the one on the same Earth as the rest of the Green Lanterns that I'm reading about, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. But I just want to point out both Tomasi, who writes Sinister Sons, and Kennedy, who writes War Journal. Both signed exclusive contracts with third-party companies shortly after signing their DC contracts. So War Journal is ending at 12 before he gets to finish his whole story. And Sinister Sons is ending at 6. And that's it on both.
That shocks me that he can't finish his story in 12 issues. Sinister Sons being 6, I think, is unfortunate. I hope they find somebody else because they're cool. That we're gonna actually talk about that one on another Wednesday, so I'm gonna save that. But it's a lot of moving parts with these characters, and I think it's really funny that the only art direction I think anybody gets for Guy Gardner doesn't matter what his hairstyle is compared to what it was the last time he appeared. It can be physically impossible for him to have had the haircut that he has now compared to what it was last time. Either way, the haircuts just have to be terrible. No matter
Bad
what.
and
Orange and just the worst possible haircut you can think of on a man. But like one issue, he's got a full bowl cut and he flies off to space. And then the next issue, he has a buzz cut. And it's hilarious to me that the only direction is clearly this has to be the worst haircut you've ever put on a human man.
It's sort of like they give him like white person Shea Coulee hair, which is bad on a white person.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a lot of moving parts, but I'm having real fun trying to figure it out. And I just was real excited to see that Star Sapphire ring show up and yell at Carol.
Oh my God, she's so horny to do some damage. I love her. She's so sad when she's not blowing stuff up, isn't she? Ugh.
I mean, like, there's also, she suffers from like white woman, businesswoman in comics syndrome, where she's like, the company and the contracts. And if the company doesn't have the contracts, because you idiot men took the contracts from the company.
And I don't know how to braid Kendra's hair.
I just really love that they stopped doing it with Emma, and instead she just talks about the money she has. She's never like, here's what Frost Industries is up to. She just has a ton of money. I think that's a lot of times with Janet Van Dyne is like, Janet Van Dyne is the anti Jumbo Carnation. She's always way too worried about the actual industry and like who's producing the clothes, and she never whines about the textiles. It just doesn't work for me. Anyway,
she ain't.
It's funny with Carol, and it's funnier because you know that at some point they're gonna have to talk about how she's Star Sapphire, and it just happened. So I can't wait.
I can't wait either. And until we come back next week, we got some more X-Men. I think we got some more DC stuff. We are really excited to bring this all your way. Kevo, what was your favorite thing you learned today? What was your big takeaway? And where can everybody find you, producer extraordinaire?
What did I enjoy the most today? Well, I'm really excited for the fact that it seems like we are starting to cover wide variety of topics like DC Comics, like Green Lantern. I know Green Lantern is something that is very near and dear to your heart. It's very funny how much you love Daredevil in the red and Green Lantern in the green. There's the red and green again, and it's all very gay and they're all very hot. I just think that's really cool. I really loved Green Lantern a little bit as a kid. He was my favorite guest star on the Batman Superman Adventure cartoon. I thought his powers were super cool, and so I'm really excited to learn more about it. Like, that was really cool, learning that there are the ringsmiths and then there's the people who operate the rings. And so I think stuff like that is really awesome, and I'm excited for us to learn and to impart wisdom for that. That was really cool. And in the interim, you can find me on the socials at Kevo Really. That's KEVOREALLY. Teak, same question. What did you enjoy, and where can the folks find you?
I enjoyed learning a bunch of new stuff about a world I know nothing about. And if I can just switch topics entirely for 1 second, who do we all think Natasha Lyonne is going to be playing in Fantastic Four?
Same.
Ooh.
She's like, hey, I'm the smoking surfer.
Yeah, I mean, like, so I really, listen, it would be very obvious if she were playing Alicia Masters. I do think there are blind actors out there.
But
a blind actor should play Alicia Masters. Come on.
I hope she's the voice of Herbie.
Amazing. I love all these eyes. I actually would just be really happy if she were literally playing Natasha Lyonne, but Natasha Lyonne is a member of the Yancey Street Gang. Like, Ben Grimm just grew up with Natasha Lyonne. And
like Katie in Shang-Chi is basically just Awkwafina. And
exactly. She just
like that.
You fucking dirtbag. So that is actually my hope, but fascinating to see the ever-growing cast list of this movie that got some lofty expectations to live up to. That's always fun. But yeah, I mean, Trial by fire with the Green Lanterns, trial by lantern fire. It's going to be fascinating to see. There's batteries galore. I love a battery. So, if you want to talk to me about my burgeoning nascent thoughts on the Green Lanterns, you just pull up to TK Elemental on your Instagrams and your Twitters. Nico, what did you enjoy most? But it has to be X-Men related, I've decided.
Well, I was going to say, I love how these two covers complement each other so beautifully.
They do.
This idea of the shadow of the ring beneath him, the shadow of the phoenix beneath her, him emerging from it, her emerging from it. It's all about big cosmic victories. But my favorite thing about X-Men was definitely the Jumbo Carnation line.
Hope would be a fantastic Green Lantern.
Oh, I agree. And until we get to come back and talk about which lanterns would make the best X-Men and vice versa, the Invisibles and the new X-Men are just the same thing.
Yeah.
You guys can check us out on Saturday talking about X-Men 97. On Sunday talking about All-Stars Season 9 Drag Race premiere. Said that backward. And we can't wait. Oh, Kevo, what you got?
And on Friday, we have another Doctor Who watch party. We appreciate everybody who joined us. We're still figuring out exactly, how we're playing that. And so join us. We're going to have a fun time. And yeah, that was all.
Well, we cannot wait to bring that all to you guys. So until next time, do us a favor, like, comment, and subscribe. We love all of our new followers. We think you guys are so amazing. We love talking to you. And we love all of our old followers. First, second, third, last, doesn't matter. We love all of you. But we also need you guys.
O'Neill's message to the new fans of Modern Family from the Disney Upfronts this week. We appreciate all of you new followers and all of our longtime followers.
And we can't wait to see you guys soon. So don't forget to stay safe, be brave, and evolve daily. That's the trifecta we need. And we can't wait to see you guys again next time. Don't forget we have broadcasts all weekend long. And we are so excited to bring that to you here on X's for Show. Don't forget you can follow us online at X's for Show on all your social media.
Cut it. Just cut his mic.
We'll talk to you guys soon.